Nanny state and tyranny in Wales escalate thanks to Mark Drakeford, the pseudo-dictator of Wales. He's now going after meal deals, food deals in supermarkets. They're going to be banned. It makes absolutely no sense. This story is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard since Mark Drakeford's policies during the lockdown. So, considering this is how Drakeford looks, this is the man, this is his face, and that's his double or triple chin. And he wants to help people in Wales to have a good diet, I'm guessing, right? I mean, pot kettle Drakeford. So the problem with this whole thing is that any of these experiments throughout the world, even in Scandinavia when they tried these things, their nanny state policies, they never worked. They're counterproductive because it makes no sense. It's the same thing with going against using sin taxes. So sin taxes are things that you go out against, whether it's gambling or alcohol or sugar, and you try to basically deter people from using them. You just create a black market. Now, you could have a grown-up conversation about the healthcare system, the NHS in Wales, which is a mess, and say, okay, how do we make sure the system is sustainable, and how do we make sure people are healthier? But doing this sort of nonsensical, gimmicky stuff doesn't actually do anything. So we also have the Welsh Government coming up with some crazy ideas. The legislation will also prevent certain foods from being placed in certain parts of a supermarket. So they're going to tell shops where to place items. So these people in the establishment think that they are so superior. They are the experts on anything in life. So, okay, they're sitting in a room with Drakeford saying, I think we should be able to tell shops and consumers and people just living in the country how to live their lives because we know. So if we move this chocolate bar from this shelf and put it there, no one's going to be fat anymore, apart from you, First Minister. So I'm guessing that was a conversation they had during that meeting. But also, when we talk about nanny state and tyranny, that thin line between the two, is because of what Drakeford did during the lockdown. Do you remember when he decided to ban books and toys in shops during the lockdown and even post-lockdown? He basically said, yeah, you're not really allowed to go and buy toys or books. You can only buy healthy food, right? And there was a bit of a backlash. There was no U-turn, there was no apology, and they continue with the same trend of policies. It's the same thing that's happening across the Western world because the slippery slope keeps getting ignored. They will start with something tiny that a lot of people in the country who would have prejudice or politics of envy, it's because they have a neighbor who's fat, for example, and say, oh yeah, I kind of like sugar tax. Because they look at the neighbor saying, I don't like that neighbor. Or their neighbor has an expensive car. So when there's a high tax on expensive cars, oh yeah, I'm very much in favor of taxing expensive cars. So they use that mentality and they take advantage of that and they keep adding more and more and more until they come to you. Not your neighbor, but you. And this is exactly the same thing that happened throughout history, not just in dictatorships like the Soviet Union or Mao's China, but even in so-called democracies. So this new bill, the new legislation, they say, by the way, it will only apply to businesses with more than 50 members of staff. So it will not impact its smaller local corner shops. It will also apply to online retailers. Well, how are you going to move the items? I don't understand. Okay. It is understood that the Welsh Government intend on working closely with the industry to outline how the legislation will work in practice over the next year, with the hope that the plans will be implemented in 2025. So basically that means if you want to get fat, go to a local shop because they're not going to be told what to sell you or where to put their items, right? But if you go to Tesco or Sainsbury's, then you're not going to get fat. That's it. You'll be completely prevented from getting fat. And the NHS will be saved. And you can clap every Thursday at 8 p.m. to worship the sacred cow that is our healthcare system, the envy of the world. That was the latest from Wales. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.